Hey, welcome to this video in which we will see how to quickly deploy a config to start with Cisco ACI. So for that purpose we will use Fabric, which is completely or almost empty, almost no configuration. As you can see, something very important are the access policies, and there's nothing, there's no switch policies, no switch profiles. We'll see there's no interface policies, no policy groups, no interface profiles or interface selectors. It's, as you can see, completely empty. We can have a look at the pools. There's nothing there. We can have a look at the physical domains. There's nothing there. And as you can expect, no access entity profile either. Tenants are empty very shortly here, and now we can start with kickstarting the fabric. So first we will define the VRFs, the bridge domains, the application networking profiles, and EPGs that we want. So we do this with two tables. In the first one we define BDs and VRFs, and the second one the tenants and EPGs. So first of all, let's enter URL and credentials for our fabric, and then we're ready to go. Let's deploy this. As you can see, we are deploying two tenants in its and four EPGs, two EPGs in each of those two tenants. So we can see those two tenants, external and my tenant. And for example, in the external tenant, we can see that these two EPGs have been created, VLAN 1 and VLAN 2. We can go to the other one because the config was slightly more interesting there, since there were two bridge domains and each bridge domain had a different IP address. We can check that's the case. VRF was created as well. There you go, and the subnet that we defined in this spreadsheet is exactly there. Okay, that was the first step. We can go to the second one. In the second step, we will start with access policies. So in the access policies, this is kind of the port profiles in NXOS. This is where we will define different ways in which servers can connect to the network, and we will as well define the switches and FEXes and how they are connected to each other. I mean, which FEX is connected to which switch. So in this spreadsheet, I'm grouping the switches in racks, and this is where you see the rack number, which we will use later. So let's do this. So this created a default physical domain, created and a couple of objects that we are going to have a look at. So for example, upon the physical domain, we can have a look at one of the EPGs that we created here and check that now there is a physical domain that has been added called default. So let's see, there you are. Yeah, and the rest of the config that was created in this step is in the fabric tab in the access policies. So you can see now there is a policy group for all leaves. I'm configuring all leaves the same way. And I configured three profiles, one per leaf and another one for ports that are commonly used across. We can see the link level policies, the CDP policies, the LDP policies, and then we can see the policy groups that aggregate those, as well as defined in the spreadsheet. Yeah, so the policy groups are there exactly, and this is what we define. For example, this one, it has a CDP on, LDP on, 1 gig without negotiation, and it's attached. It's connected to the attached entity profile default. If we have a look at that one, the attached entity profile default is connected to the physical domain default. The physical domain default is associated to a VLAN pool called default as well, and the VLAN pool contains the VLANs that were specified in the spreadsheet. So all these objects and the corresponding hierarchy has been correctly created by the spreadsheet. Right, we're ready to proceed with step 3. which is defining how external servers are connected to those servers. So we defined policies, we defined our switches. So now let's define how servers are connected. Here I have 4 options to define how a server is connected, either with active-active, active-passive, or maybe to only one of the 2 switches in every rack. Remember that I grouped the switches and the fexes in rack numbers. You can choose as well which access attachable and access profile, entity profile. Let's leave it at that. Let's deploy and let's see what it did. Now, but before deploying, let's have a look and check that those profiles are empty, apart from the ports where the effects are connected, but there's no server here. So now let's deploy. And after a while, 6 servers deployed, we are going to see that the servers have been added here, either on both fexes or maybe on one of them if we define that the servers are not dual homed. And for the switches, we have the special switch profile covering both switches. So that's really easy to add servers that are equally connected to both switches in a rack. Okay, so that was defining the server connectivity. The 4th and last step is defining those servers to which EPGs they belong to. And we will use a VLAN ID in order to identify the server. So for each server, we have specified one EPG, and we have specified whether the VLAN used, which VLAN number to use, and whether that VLAN is going to be tagged or not. So really easy. You can use a table form as I'm doing here. I'm working on an alternative to use like a more array sort of things where you have servers on the rows and the EPGs on the columns, and then in the intersection you define the VLAN. But for a moment, let's go back to the table. Let's deploy it and see what's going on in our APIC. All right. Now, the way we are doing this is with static path bindings in the EPGs. So let's have a look at the EPGs. For example, in this external EPG, this is where we deployed in VLAN 1 and VLAN 2. Let's have a look at VLAN 1. And we will see all static bindings there on VLAN 1 untagged or with this .1p encap, which is equivalent, and in VLAN 2 the same.